So I want to do a VR to the lovely James Feeney, who has a wonderful tag out at the moment about our sentimental decks. Which decks do we love because they hold some sort of sentimental reason within them? For me, that is probably going to be all my decks, but for the sake of this video, let's just hone it down a little bit, and I'm going to choose the decks and share the decks today that I know my sentimental decks for specific reasons that I can share. And first, with my mama's heart on, I've got to share the decks on Tilly's shelf in the lounge, on our altar in the lounge where her decks are, because her decks are full of memories of preschool run card pulls and chats and just memories to fill a mama's heart. So of course all of the decks on there are sentimental, but I'm going to choose just two of them. This one, the Field Guide to Garden Dragons, this was given to me by a gorgeous friend, so it's sentimental as well for that reason. And also this one, the Mythical Creatures, both of these to fill a mama's heart to the brim with memories full of sentiment. This deck came to me from a lovely friend, so it's sentimental for that reason as well. Plus all the kids have adored this deck. So you can see we've got different foods. We've got the blackberry dragon, the gooseberry dragon, the watermelon dragon, and I can remember opening this deck with the three kids around me and all three of them being blown away by it. So that's a memory with the kids. Plus, for a while, all three children were asking for cards from this deck before school, preschool run, a card pull each to see what dragon they'd got for the day, and then we'd review it if we remembered at the end of the day to see how it fitted. So it was a beautiful, it's beautiful memories with all three of the kids. Now me and Tilly still use it, and the other two when they think about it, and it's just a real gorgeous deck to use. And it's full of sentimental memories that just fill my mama's heart up. And it's the same with the Mythical Creatures, bought for just a couple of pounds off eBay. I thought the kids might like it because of the sort of Disney-esque feel to it. Who am I kidding? I thought I would love it, and we all do. And I've shared this deck many times with its messages that are way deeper and more thought-provoking than you could imagine from just purely viewing it from aesthetics. Tilly will often have numerous cards pulled from this deck, wanting to know which mermaid she's going to have for the day, which will be the first dragon out for the day, which will be the first unicorn out for the day, and which will be the first fairy out for the day. Of course, all of these mythical creatures, elemental base, so it's an elemental deck as well. Lots of lovely memories with the kids preschool run, wondering what mythical creatures is going to be ours for the day. Again, one to fill my mama's heart. And I couldn't possibly do this video without sharing my very first tarot deck. Now, I came to tarot late. I had no idea that there was hype around this deck. I still hadn't discovered Tarot Tube at that point. This was shared to me by my best friend over a FaceTime call, when she surprised me by telling me that she had a number of decks, and she pulled this one out, and we did a little intuitive reading online over FaceTime. I just fell in love with it. So it's my first tarot. I got off that phone call and immediately bought the deck. I had no idea. The first time I flipped through this deck, I didn't even realise that the majors appeared in every deck. I thought every tarot deck would have different cards in. That's how new to tarot and how little I understood. But I could read these cards because it's so similar to my artwork, and I read the patterns and the lines and the colours and the directions and the shapes, and to be honest, some of those first readings weren't far off. what I would read now with full tarot card meaning knowledge. It feels like a gateway in, well, it is my gateway into tarot, but it feels like the gateway that kind of joined two paths that were always destined to meet. So my art practice path and the way I use art in my life, and then the way tarot came in to join hands with it. This wasn't a new path, it was a parallel path for me, and that's why it's never felt new to me. It's felt instinctual, it's felt just part of my makeup from the get-go. And yeah, I love it. This is the deck that brought tarot into my life, and I will forever be grateful for it for that. So Kim Cran's The Wild Unknown. So we've had the sentiment of memories with my kids, we've had the sentiment of my first tarot deck. How about my first indie deck? I thought I would never ever treat myself to an indie deck ever, having always taught myself that my needs should come last and everybody else needed to be sorted first. To put my wants as priority, it was quite a moment. And the deck that I did that with was this Luminous Void Tarot, which I absolutely love. When I saw this online and I saw the watercolour style of it, the shape of it, the beautiful backs of the deck, I knew that this would be the one indie deck that I would forever regret not owning. And if I could only own one, I thought this was the one that I would want more than any other. So for one Christmas, a Christmas after I'd had a wondrous year with tarot and with money saved, because in lockdown petrol had gone, trips to the van had gone, taking my kids out to theatres had gone, so I'd got a little bit extra cash. I treated myself, and it was love at first sight. I'm still blown away by how ethereal and gorgeous this deck really is. So the watercolour aspect, the gentle sort of loving hug that I feel from this deck, the card depictions, just the quality of the deck as well, and just the excitement of feeling like I was worthy of having an indie deck. It was quite a moment on lots of levels, a really healing moment for me, a moment where I declared that actually my needs count and it's okay to look after them. It's okay to put myself first sometimes. It's okay to get what I want rather than wondering about what everybody else wants. It's okay to spend money on myself. It's okay to take up space. This was the deck that taught me all of that, and I just love it for that. It's a deck that gave me strength. So the Luminous Void Tarot, it's got big sentimental reasons for being in my collection and me loving it so much. Okay, and now a deck that I consider to be my first soul deck, really, one of many. I am not a person that believes in just one, and that's the Tarot of the Sweet Twilight. This was about, I think, my 5th or 6th deck that I ever bought myself, and I can remember seeing pictures of it on a Facebook tarot group and just sitting up and going, wow, what is that deck? And it was the colours. This is very much a colour palette that I love, this kind of sort of purple, lilac-y, sort of muted musky colours with a sort of purple overlay. It's just a colour palette. It's an unusual colour palette, and it's one that I adore. So I immediately ordered it, and I was incredibly excited about this deck to come, and I just fell in love with it. It took my breath away that I just couldn't bring myself to put the deck away. So it was a deck that I worked with for a while, and I wondered whether I would ever pick up any of my other decks ever again. I absolutely love the Three of Swords, the fact that it's her hand on the dagger handle, and for me that reads really clearly with how I read this card. For me, the third dagger coming in after the Two of Swords is that truth that you need to face up to, the truth that you know will break your own heart, but you need to face up to it anyway. I also love this Fool card, this idea of dancing to the beat of your own drum. So there are lots of quirky takes on cards in this deck. I always say the more positive cards read slightly more negatively, the negative cards read slightly more positively. It definitely has a twist on some of these card meanings, but I love it. I am still completely attached to it. This Nine of Cups I adore. It's just a wonderful, wonderful deck. So Tarot of the Sweet Twilight with these backs, I just love it. And of course I can't talk about my sentimental decks without talking about the most amazing gift I got sent by a friend, which is this one, Tarot Avatara, the Frida Kahlo deck by Gabby, Angus, West. Now Frida, I've said before, has always been with me. I've always loved her work, right from a little girl fascinated with art and constantly making and drawing and sticking things together. And as my life has evolved and I've been through different events in my life, there have been parallels between Frida's path and my path, and the way she uses art that just have been incredible. And she has always been a very comforting presence in my life that has literally always been there as long as I can remember. So when I knew that this deck was being made, I cannot tell you how much I wanted it, but it was just so totally out of my budget at the time, and I got gifted it, and it's probably one of the most incredible things ever to be gifted to me in my whole life, because I cannot express how much I love this deck and what it means to me, and the sentimental, incredible place it holds in my heart because of Frida. And my friend, she knows who she is. I think she realises what it meant, but oh my goodness me, it's just amazing. So yeah, this on many levels, this beautiful, gorgeous, gorgeous deck has a huge place in my heart, and I can't do a video about sentimental decks without sharing the ribbon around a bombshell that is the Tarot Avatara. And now a deck I bought for study purposes from a local shop. It was nothing particularly special, it was truly just bought for study purposes, until one day the voice of my dad came through loud and clear and whispered inside my head, "Go and get your deck." Which deck? This deck. And my dad began to speak to me through this deck. It's this one with these backs. It's not the most popular Rider-Waite deck, I know, and even I've moaned about the muddy lines, but it's my favourite because it holds my dad's voice. Whenever I hear that whisper and feel like my dad is here, I always pull certain cards, and as I get to it, there it is. As I get to say it, there it is on top. I always pull certain cards and as clarifiers to know it's my dad. And the messages that have come through have had me weeping at times. It's a deck now that I put aside to use exclusively for that. It sits on my ancestor altar next to my dad's autobiography that he wrote. and I love it. Although I am not a great Rider-Waite collector, and I don't tend to reach for a straight Rider-Waite deck to do my general readings with, even so, this deck would be the one that I would grab if the house was about to plummet to the ground, because it's got my dad's voice in it. So why wouldn't I? So the original Rider-Waite, with all its blurry lines and its unclear printing, incredibly sentimental to me. And while we're talking about fathers, let's flip the coin and talk about mothers as well. Now, I felt really lacking maternal, supportive, loving energy ever. And I got pulled to a deck that surprised me that I would ever want to work with, purely because of a history in the Christian church which left a very sour taste in my mouth. I didn't think I would really want to work with any deck that linked to anything that could possibly be deemed as Christian. However, this deck called, and this deck on repeat has given me that warm, nurturing, maternal energy that I've craved from time to time in my life. And at a point a few years ago where I was really going through it and really struggling, I went to Glastonbury for the weekend with a friend, and I was really in the depths of despair with issues around motherhood and family. And I walked the waters in the Chalice Well garden and just had a massive visitation, I suppose you could call it, from this energy that I also feel in this deck. Mother Mary energy flowing up through the waters, up through my feet, to the point that I was left standing crying in the water. It was really something else. Very, very, very powerful. And I'd only bought this deck previously, about a week previously to going, so it was all converging on this very clear message that Mother Mary energy was definitely the way for me to move forward. And then, don't you know, I walked into the Chalice Well garden shop, and greeting me as I entered the door was a huge display of these decks and the journals, extra confirmation. In that shop as well, next to it, I discovered this deck, the work of Cheryl Yambrat Rose, and these two really have kind of felt like they've come into my life to hold hands together, although on first sight you wouldn't really think so. However, they have, and both of these hold a sentimental, healing place in my heart that has seen me through some tricky moments, and I love them both very, very much. They're really wonderful. Of course, Cheryl Yambrat Rose also holds sort of Glastonbury energy, and going back with my friend to Glastonbury, it made me realise how very special it is there. I'm desperate to go back again. So yeah, both of these decks are incredibly sentimental to me. Now, I know I said that this was my very first tarot deck, and it was kind of, because when I was about 19, my dad's friend handed me a strange book with cards in the middle of it, thinking that it might be something I liked. I had no idea what it was. I thought it was a bit weird, to be honest. Didn't know what it was. Chopped the pictures up on the cards for my artwork. didn't think anything of it till years later when this came into my life, and I thought back to that strange book with cards in the middle that I'd chopped up in my artwork, and in horror I realised I'd chopped up a tarot deck, possibly. So all I could remember was a silver book that opened up into a box with cards in the middle. Couldn't remember the name, so I went online searching to see if I could remind myself what this strange memory of a deck in my youth could have been, and I found it. The Harmony Angel cards, a silver box that opens up with cards in the middle. So this has got huge sentimental memories to me, because this truly is my first deck, or a replacement for my first deck, because of course the second I found it, of course I replaced it. And I don't think any deck ever has been so eagerly anticipated in the post as the arrival of this deck. There was just something about rediscovering it and wanting to know what I'd chopped up all those years ago. Did it hold a meaning that I'd been sent on a quest to re-find it? And I love it. I absolutely love it. The angel cards are incredible in here. When it arrived, I pounced on the package and I called the kids in and told them this story as I ripped the box open and started showing them the cards. And I told them this story of this deck long ago that I'd chopped up and I'd managed to track down again, and this was it. To which my daughter Poppy replied, "But we've still got that box." And what I must have done, I must have thrown the box into my art supplies, which the kids are constantly raiding and using. And she informed me it's the box that she turned into her little book of monsters inspired from Harry Potter. She ran upstairs to grab it, and sure enough, don't you know, here it is, without the cards, but I've got the cards in here. Both of these just have a huge sentimental value to me. I love them both. I love that story. I know I've told it before. I'm sorry if I'm being boring, but I just never get tired of telling it. I love that story. Two newer decks that are becoming sentimental decks as well is this one in my travel case. Sentimental because it's in my travel case and we have adventures together. Of course, if you've watched my channel for half a second, you'll know that this is the Dark Goddess Tarot that started the quest for the Sheila Gigs of Britain and Ireland. It sent me on a quest visiting the churches to do a tarot reading underneath the Sheilas with this deck to get a message from the Sheilas. The memories and the adventures that I'm getting with this deck has it firmly in a place of huge sentiment for me. I love it. I love the quest it sent me on. I love the excitement it's brought into my life. I love the fact it's given me a chance to connect with my friend who's also coming on the adventures with me. Just having an adventure tarot deck is just the best thing ever. So the Dark Goddess Tarot, definitely one of my sentimental decks. And of course this one in here, which is the Arthurian Tarot. I think doing another quest with this, doing the Kahlo quest with it in the book, and spending so much time with this deck so far this year, like way more than I've spent with any other deck ever. Even the Dreams of Gaia, I've spent more time with this deck than even that deck, which again is one of my sentimental decks as well. This deck, I think if you give any deck that sort of amount of time, it can't help but become a real sentimental deck for you. It reminds me of places I grew up. It reminds me of my own path of searching down the grail, of rewilding the wasteland. I've had some incredible moments pathworking and in meditation with the Sword King. It's the deck that's taught me to meditate. It's the deck that's taught me to pathwork with cards. It's the deck that has brought in a huge amount of healing and hope. It's the deck that's reconnected me to a childhood love of the stories of King Arthur. Again, it's another deck that calls me back to Glastonbury and also to Cornwall, to Tintagel in Cornwall. It's the deck that makes me incredibly happy to live where I do as well, in Britain with all this rich history. So yeah, it holds a really special place in my heart, the Arthurian Tarot, and I'm incredibly grateful that I've got it. And the last deck that I want to share today on this VR for my sentimental decks is this one, the She of Insight Oracle. Now, this is Renee here on YouTube. It's Renee's deck. You'll find Renee's channel over on Meadowlark Mystics. Now, me and Renee, we talk every month on FaceTime, even though she's one side of the world and I'm the other. And I love her dearly. She's a dear, dear friend. And I kind of had a behind the scenes seat to watch this deck develop and to see the creative muse sweep into Renee's life and just turn her into the most incredible artist. I got to hear about the thought processes behind these cards, about the amazing moments that she had in the making of this deck, which is truly spectacular, truly channeled, I feel this deck is. And of course, the second that this deck came out, of course I jumped on it to buy it, bought with my own money. I have to say, I'm not just bigging this deck up because it's a friend's deck. This was bought with my own money and it's loved. It's also the only deck that I've ever had a mention in the guidebook of, which is so exciting. She says here, Candy for holding my hand when I needed it. Although I don't really think Renee needed her hand holding much in this process. It was just a spectacular process to behold. Here's Luminous, which Renee sent me an artwork of. I've also got 4 original artworks upstairs on my bedroom wall. That's how blown away with this whole process I was, and how grateful I am that I got to witness it. It was incredible. Here are 2 that I've got the artwork of. I have the original artwork for Hope and for Maiden. I say original artwork, I have the collage artwork turned into a bigger artwork with crystals and board. I'm going to put a bit in here to show you what I'm talking about, because I am completely waffling. But I love this deck. I love Renee, and I just think that this is just one of my most sentimental decks that I'll probably ever own. So that's the She of Insight Oracle. So that's it, guys. All my sentimental decks, well, not all of them, but some of them that jump into my mind when I think of the decks that hold a specific sentiment for me and that I get all squishy when I think about them. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, James, for this lovely VR. I'll leave James's links below. Of course, I'll leave a link to Renee's site as well, her YouTube channel, and her Make Playing Cards site where you can buy this deck, which is incredible. I'll leave links to my Sheila in a Gig Quest videos as well. In fact, I'll put those up here and here now. So other stuff for you to check out if you so want to. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.